Welcome everyone to the Planning, Regulatory and Licensing Committee of Wednesday, 4th of January. Can I wish everyone a Happy New Year. And before we start the agenda, I'll ask Geraint to ring out the paragraph in relation to broadcasting.
Okay, please note that this meeting will be recorded for subsequent broadcast via the authority's internet site. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the authority. The public seating areas are within view of the camera, and by entering the chamber and using the public seating areas, members of the public are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings as outlined above. And if I could ask all members to make sure their mobile phones are switched off, as they do interfere with the sound recording systems.
Thank you. Item 1, the apologies for absence.
Councillor Howard Barrett, who's ill.
And Councillor Gareth Lewis, who's already given his apologies. Okay, that completes the full committee then. Item 2, any declarations taking into account note A and B. Yeah, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Only that I am a patient at Morlais Medical Practice and a customer of both Pern's Pharmacy and Dowler's Pharmacy.
That's not a prejudicial.
Right. There are no other any other declarations of interest. If not, we then go on to the planning applications and the recommendations on the Town and Country Plat Act 1990 and the Planning and Compensation Act of 1991. See item 3 there, and there's a report on pages 1 to 24. But all members of the Planning Committee have received an email from Stuart Hackwell of the Dowler's Medical Practice, which was sent out late yesterday evening, and I'm going to give an opportunity for all those who may not have read it to read it before we come to the agenda. Could somebody put, any of the members put their hands up, already seen it and read it? So few have, others haven't. So it's page either side, so I'll give you an opportunity to read it from end to end. everybody had an opportunity or reading it? Right, as I said, the item is P/16/003. It's the Morris Medical Centre, Berry Square, Dowlais. And it's to consider report of the Deputy Chief Executive, pages 1 to 24. And Hugh Roberts is going to take this report.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this application is for change of use of part of the building to a pharmacy in A1 use class, the creation of a new entrance with canopy and footpath, and installation of new external condenser unit on Morris Medical Centre. Members will recall that the application was originally reported to committee on the 20th of July 2016. At this meeting it was resolved to defer determination of the application to undertake a fact-finding site visit. This took place on the 1st of August 2016. Following the fact-finding visit and in an attempt to overcome the original refusal reason, a considerable amount of additional support and information, including a retail report, has been submitted by the applicant. A summary of this information is provided on pages 2 to 10 of the report. As a result of this additional information, additional publicity exercises were undertaken. A comprehensive summary of the objections raised as a result of these exercises is provided on pages 5 to 10 of the report. As a result of the additional consultation exercise undertaken, the Engineering and Traffic Group Leader has raised no objection. The Planning Division's Group Leader, Policy and Implementation, has maintained his objection to the application, pointing out that the location of the proposal outside the local centre would have an adverse impact on the vitality, attractiveness and viability of Dowlais Local Centre. Having carefully considered the additional information submitted and the objections raised, it is considered that the proposal would result in a concentration of customers in and out of local centre premises with a subsequent reduction of footfall within the local centre. The proposal would therefore have an adverse impact on the existing local shop, i.e. Dowlais Pharmacy, which would be harmful to the vitality and viability of Dowlais Local Centre. It is also concerned that the premises containing the existing Perns Pharmacy located within the local centre may retain vacant for a significant period of time, which would further harm the local centre. I should point out, members, that I've also considered the email in front of you, and the contents of it don't change the recommendation, which is highlighted on page 13 and 14 of the, pages 13 and 14 of the report as a recommendation for refusal, which amends the original recommendation which was put before members in the original report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Hugh. Questions from any members? Councillor Williams, question, and then
Thank you, Chair. Is it normal for there to be just 2 objection letters, one from the same objector for this sort of application? Would you expect more objections?
It's not the number of objections that are received, it's the content of the objections that are important in planning terms. Obviously the content of the objections from the owner of Dowlais Pharmacy quite clearly, and this application impacts greatly on as highlighted in the report, on that premises within the local centre. So the issues raised in the objections are relevant rather than the actual number of objections that have been received.
okay.
It states on page 3 that there are no vacant units within the centre. If an alternative business took over the vacant premises of Perns Pharmacy, could it be argued that this would offer greater choice and improve the vitality and viability of the local centre?
I think, well, the existing Perns Pharmacy isn't vacant at the moment because it's still operating as a pharmacy, so it wouldn't become vacant until if this application were to be approved. I think the report highlights the concerns with regard to the relocation of a pharmacy outside the local centre. Obviously, there's a local centre boundary that's been drawn, and that's been adopted by the local development plan. There's strong policies for not allowing retail units outside that local centre. So, in terms of the impact on the local centre, it's from the relocation of a pharmacy outside the local centre and its impact on the existing facilities within the local centre.
Councillor Chaplin, then Councillor Smart, and then Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Could you explain to me how this proposal could have a significant adverse effect on the vitality and viability of the local centre? We're talking about the relocation of one unit. When I consider Trago Mills and how that is going to impact on trade in the town, this pales in significance.
Yeah, I don't think we're comparing apples with apples there in terms of the scale of Trago Mills and the retail elements of it, or the retail park itself. I mean, the issue with this is purely looking at the impact of providing a similar facility in an out-of-town location in a existing medical centre, and it's that impact on the existing facilities within that retail area. So, I mean, the retail boundary is drawn for a specific reason. It's there for encouragement of A1 uses within that area, and outside that area discourages such uses. So it's the relocation of an A1 use outside the local centre in a medical centre which impacts directly on an existing facility within the local centre, and that's contrary to the policy of the LDP.
Question?
My question's been answered, Chair, thank you.
Councillor Smith?
Thank you, Chair. On the planning rules and regulations, I thought if somebody in the business, I thought they couldn't object because it affected business, it can only affect on the planning issue. Because the comments made earlier on, Pools made a decision that, made a comment that it could affect the business. Same thing was to Councillor Chaplin trying to say now, Trago Mills or something like that. So I thought they can only object on planning issues and not on the business side of it.
Yeah, competition isn't a planning matter within the existing retail areas. I think the issue is you're providing an advantage. What we're saying in the report is an advantage to persons relocated in the medical centre, because there's a base there for customers for that facility which isn't available. So the competition issue there is an in-centre location to an out-of-town location.
The other question I got is, can we have a look at the review that the Dowlais retail centre then, what are you on about? Because I thought the retail centre would be from up to the Pant Road, all the way down to the shopping area itself, that street. But what you said, Ben, I was only as far as the chemist and above. So, no, there's something wrong. So when we got a shopping area 20, 30 yards down the road, and we're not included in the whole length of that Dowlais High Street.
Yeah, I think that's probably an excellent suggestion, is that obviously there's a review of the local development plan coming up shortly, and I would suggest that there's opportunities within the process of our local development plan to consider things like retail boundaries and whether needed extended, what happens in those areas. And I think that's an important point you've made there, is that the consideration needs to be taken through that process, and there's also a process of consultation through the new revision of the LDP, and those can then be taken into consideration to see whether that retail boundary is amended or is not a retail boundary there at all, or it remains exactly the way it is. But that's a policy issue, and that's the right process to consider. That is through the LDP revision process.
Oh, sorry, Chair, what's the time scale on that then, you, for us to start talking? Because we're talking big business there, you know, this is not little stuff, it's big business for small business to take it forward.
Yeah, the LDP review process is underway, and there's various stages. If you remember, we went to full council and we set out a timetable of all the different stages involved. So summer to later this year now, we will be going through that process of looking at the reviews of such things as retail areas, as well as all the other things in the LDP.
When will I come back to council then? for now.
In terms of the next stage to go back to council, I believe it's June this year will be the next stage to go through, but that won't include the review of the retail boundaries at that point. That work will be ongoing over the next year, but we'll be in communication with you regarding that.
Councillor Smart? Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Chair. One or two of my points have been answered. We're saying that if this application is granted and the Perns shop becomes vacant and is unable to be filled, okay, that this is a concern for us. Well, I can think of many properties within the borough that are vacated and for various reasons haven't been reoccupied. I'm wondering if that's a valid point that we should. I agree we want to have the properties reoccupied, but for example in town, certain parts of town, shops have gone for whatever reason, whether they've gone to another place in town, that shop has been empty, and then, you know, we're struggling to get it. But is that a legal or a proper reason to turn it down, that the shop may be vacant for some time?
Yeah, it's not the major reason for refusing the application. It's an issue that if we locate in a business outside an existing centre and put inside an existing centre and put it outside an existing centre, obviously there's an issue with that premises potentially become vacant for a significant amount of time, and therefore losing a retail unit within the existing centre. So it is a relevant planning consideration. A report was submitted with the application to show why the existing premises wasn't suitable for an upgraded pharmacy. I think in the email you've just read, I think the medical centre said that, well, it may not be suitable for the pharmacy, but it may be suitable for another retail user. I take that point on board, but having been in the shop itself, it is an awkward shaped shop. It has got awkward floors, and it may not be suitable for every retailer. So that's our point, is it may be that a significant amount of work may be needed to get another retailer in there, or it may not. But a vacant unit within the retail centre as a result of that retailer coming outside the centre is a material planning consideration.
Question? Question? Is it question?
Yeah, but the current occupiers have got the difficulty to upgrade the shop because of its difficulties, and yet we're not happy to see them go to another premise so that they've overcome that problem. You know, we take the problem of somebody who may move in there, but we're leaving the problem with the current occupiers. And the other thing, Chair, is would I be right in saying, I know we refer it to the LDP and so forth, but this, to me, this seems to be one of the things that when you do an LDP, things will always slip through, and there'll always probably be an anomaly. And haven't we gone outside the LDP in certain issues where something is right on the edge, and we can, I think we've done it for a housing, for a house application. So it's not that we can't do it, because we have done it if we think that the reasons are justified.
Yeah, you're correct. I think in this, if you have a look at and read the report and see the strength of the objections to this application, then I think obviously there's a policy in place. It's quite a strong policy in terms of the retail boundary. It's there at the moment. There's a raft of information being submitted with the application. It is a finely balanced decision, which is highlighted in the conclusion. But on the judgment, our judgment is the application should be refused because of the impact on the existing town centre and the retailers within it.
Oh, any more questions from any members? No? No more questions? Are we on comments? Any comments? Right. Councillor Mansbridge, first, Councillor Goldsworthy and Councillor Chaplin.
Well, it does seem to me, Mr. Chairman, that we're being asked to be a referee between two different parties here, both fighting over the same bone. You notice on page 11, where he say, in the one part of the report, it mentions TAN 4, and TAN 4 also states that the Welsh Government does not prescribe particular methodology for undertaking assessments, and this is up to each local planning authority to be satisfied with the need of evidence and the assessments. And when we see the thing by year, this contradicts some of the report as well, because not all the prescriptions issued in these pharmacies are in fact put through the pharmacy itself. I should imagine some of them are taken down to Tesco's, where some of the medicines will be cheaper anyway. So I just think it's a spat between two.
Councillor Goldsworthy?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think, all right, this may well be a personal issue between the objector and the applicant, but I think that's a side issue anyway. I think what we have to look at are purely on planning terms, and in planning terms, it's quite clear this application falls outside the local plan, and that's a fact. I went on the site visit back in August, and it was quite clear to me that if we approve this, it would definitely impact on businesses who are properly within the local plan. Now, the solution for members and the applicant is to lobby for a change in the local plan, which is right and proper under the democratic processes. But as things stand at the moment, it's a fact it is outside the local plan. Now, analogy has been used in relation to the wider borough in relation to Trago Mills. Now, I see the Dowlas area as similar to my own area in Trianis. Now, Trago Mills is out-of-town shopping, as is sometimes described. Now, areas like Trianis have suffered with out-of-town shopping for 100 years. You know, we've always had out-of-town shopping problem. It's called Pontypridd Market and Merthyr Town Centre. You know, it depends where you live, whether it's out-of-town shopping or not, or where you're trading. But in this issue, I think that's a complete side issue anyway. It's not relevant to this particular application area, because I see it in the same terms as a place like Treharris, where the local businesses are there to compete with each other within the particular area. You're not going to attract businesses from any other village. You're probably only going to attract the businesses from within your area. And I think this is where the local plan is very important, because it ensures that the existing businesses are going to be protected. Now, if it turns out that things have changed, well, that's for another day and another issue. But in this particular case, I think we have to take full recognizance of the local plan, and in fact, I would move the recommendation.
Councillor Chaplin.
Thank you, Chair. I find it very difficult to see how this proposal is going to cause harm to the viability and vitality of the centre. It's one relocation, that's all. And if the Dowlas town centre is that weak that relocating one particular business is going to have an adverse effect on the vitality and viability of the centre, God help us.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
I've been trying to get my head around this, and after Civic in, and I know the place regular, because more or less in Dowlas, you've got three areas in it. You've got the shopping area, you've got the centre, and then you've got the top of Pont Road. So, you know, it's three areas and three sections in between. If anybody wanted to start something up or to move, you've got to get planning, and planning won't be there. So I know I'm trying to get my head around this, and I can't see why. Sorry, the first I'm going to go against the recommendation because I can't see it my way how the big changes and alterations are going to happen in that area. Simple as that. So I brought my cards to the table. I can't see. I've been in a site meeting. I know the place regular. I pass it regular, and I can't see what the difference is going to make.
Williams?
Thank you. I just want to say that both pharmacies are in a prime location on the main road. One has an advantage over the other with parking, and of course the size, they're able to have more retail space, and there are no vacant units within the centre, so we could perhaps assume that the vacancy would be filled sooner rather than later. And I just wonder what the patients of the Dowlais ward of this medical practice would prefer.
Okay. Any other comments from any members? None? Well, you see the recommendation is for refusal. I take it, Councillor Goldsworthy, you've moved that recommendation. Is there a seconder to Councillor Goldsworthy's recommendation? Councillor Smart, a seconded. Can you all now vote, please?
Sorry, Chair, can I vote an amendment that
Yeah. Yes or no? No, hold on now. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't know what's... Say it again. If
you're voting to go with the officer's recommendation, which is a refusal, you vote yes.
yeah,
If you're not accepting what the officer has said, you say no.
right.
the other way around that?
So can we start again? Because
You change your vote. Yeah.
Well, that recommendation has not been carried, and Geraint Morgan, the solicitor, now will explain to us the procedure.
What's happened now is that, quite simply, officer's recommendation hasn't been accepted. That does not mean that the planning application's approved. I assume it is members' wish that it will come back to the appropriate committee with conditions, with a recommendation for approval. Is that members' wish? There is no amendment, but I'm...
Sorry, Chair, but if I could go back to the officers again, and they could come back with recommendations for approval, that should be done in the beginning, shouldn't it? This is going now. Are we looking backwards in? I don't know.
No. Nobody has moved that it be approved. It's quite simply been refused. Sorry, not carried. Yeah. Officer's recommendation has not been accepted. And that was the decision before members today. Do you go with officer's recommendation or not? Now, you've decided not to accept that recommendation, which does not mean that there's a planning approval.
I'm sure Councillor Smith was prepared to put an amendment, but he wasn't allowed to put that amendment forward. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, but Chair, I'm completely lost in this, because there was a recommendation for it to be, officer's recommendation be supported. That was moved and seconded. Councillor Smith then was coming in, as I understand, you correct me if I'm wrong, with an amendment, and he was told, no, we got a approval, and we're not taking an amendment.
Oh, sorry. The recommendation had been moved by Councillor Galsworthy and it had been seconded by Councillor Smart. So we moved to the vote. If Councillor Smith had wanted to move an amendment, he should have moved the amendment prior to that. And we would have then voted on the amendment first.
If you could put your speaker on.
You got questions, answer questions, and that vote have to accept the officer's recommendation come out on the question time we had. So should it been on the second one when we made the comments? Yeah, the chairman asked for questions. Any questions for this? That was then. When I look at it, that recommendation would done then on the questions and not as on the next stage on the comments.
I understand it, Chair. I don't know if I'm wrong, but an amendment should be put forward during the comment stage. Is that correct?
That is correct. Right at the, if Councillor Smith had moved an amendment before the mover and seconder, and we were actually into the vote when that happened, so that's why I stopped Councillor Smith.
Can Councillor Smith now put forward an amendment now, after the vote?
What has happened is officer's recommendation has not been accepted. No one has actually moved that it be approved.
I'm going to suggest to you that we have a 5-minute adjournment and then we'll come back. Okay? Right, members. We've had a discussion. Are you asking, making a point?
Because officer's recommendation has not been accepted, we've made a decision which is contrary to the local development plan, and therefore, in my estimation, we should now refer this to full council.
Yes, and that's what that's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask for an amendment in view of the
Did try to work through last night, but remember that we'll give planning permission for this planning issue.
I suggest that the amendment is actually that it comes back to the next appropriate committee minded to approve, is what you're actually saying, Councillor Smith.
Are you happy?
Next weekend.
Are you happy with the wording that's just been given by Kenneth Morgan as the legal representative?
Do that then, Chair, because minded to approve.
For approval, but it will need to go to the appropriate committee.
This committee's decision is to not support the officers, and the next time it comes and if people are absent tonight for good reason, they could change that decision, isn't it?
Unless it's an amendment on time.
They could change that decision, which would go
deal with the issue as has been moving on an amendment. Is there a seconder to that? Is there a
Bill is just saying, but you could in the next meeting you could go back to refusal. This is what I'm saying. This is another bite at the cherry for somebody who's got a different opinion to me.
That's quite correct, Councillor Jones. It could come back to the next committee, and when the two other members are present, the vote could fall a different way. It could be 6-5 or whatever it is in favour of refusal. However, there is the issue that there is the LDP issue. Now, if it does come back for approval, it will have to go to council afterwards. Yes.
Happen then is for the decision of this committee to be overturned.
Got no option, do we?
That's democracy in action, isn't it? You have made your decision today, which is not to accept officers' recommendation. When it comes back, none of us know what's going to happen in a month or 6 weeks' time, which way someone's going to vote. You cannot tie people's hands.
We can't see into the future. It's as simple as that. Is this a query now? Yeah.
That you can't refer a decision back until 6 months have elapsed.
Yes, there is that. You're quite correct, Councillor Chaplin. But what has happened today is you voted not to accept officers' recommendation, which is a refusal. What we now have is a planning application, which to all intents and purposes remains undetermined because the officer's recommendation was refusal. You haven't accepted that. So it does need to be determined.
Don't that rule apply to council, full council meetings though, didn't it?
I couldn't answer that for you, Councillor Mansbridge, without going and getting the relevant part of the Constitution.
Councillor Smith? I think Councillor Smart. Sorry, Williams.
Might the officer's recommendation change by next time?
I can't answer that for you, Councillor Williams.
Councillor Smart, you
Thank you, Chair. Just to try and move things on, because we're going to go around in circles all night to look at it. Councillor Smith has made an amendment. Should we just second it, take the vote?
Well, I was asking for it, but there was various hands
So we
going
can come back to the next committee
So
meeting and make a
Is
decision.
there a second to Councillor Smith's amendment? Oh, Councillor Mansbridge?
Yeah, the member to prove it. Planning application.
Are you clear now?
Oh, it will be members' decision.
Yeah. Are you all clear now? Right. Yeah, it's been seconded by Councillor Mansbridge. Sorry, can we carry that vote again? Right. So we're voting yes now, isn't it?
Yes,
we are.
with a little bit of problem with the technology.
And it's likely to come back to the next committee?
It'll come back to the next appropriate committee.
Oh, next appropriate. Okay. All right. Next item on the agenda, which is item 4, that's P/15/0204, Tydfil Farm Mountain Air, and it's the committee report of the Deputy Chief Executive, and it's pages 25 to 34.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this application relates to an area of land measuring approximately 0.5 hectares, which forms part of Tydfil Farm, located to the south of Danagraig development in Tynrodden. Outline planning permission is being sought for the demolition of the existing farmhouse and the outbuilding within the grounds.
and for the residential development of the site. All matters relating to the access, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale have all been reserved for future consideration. As such, is only the principle of the development that is being considered. The indicative layout suggests that a scheme of 5 dwellings could be accommodated within the site, and the existing access lane serving Tydfil farm could be improved to provide better access to the site as well. As a result of the consultation exercise, there were no objections raised by either of the internal or external consultees. However, I should point out to members that the response from the Town Planning Division's Countryside Officer should have also been included in the list of responses from consultees on page 27. For completeness, I can confirm that the Countryside Officer didn't raise any objections to the development, and reference was made to this in the ecology section of the report on page 31. As a result of the publicity exercise, 5 letters of objection were received from local residents adjoining the site, and a summary of their concerns are set out in the publicity section of the report, which relate to matters of highway safety, ground conditions, ecological impacts, drainage matters, and the impact on residential amenity and disturbance in the area. The merits of the application have been considered in detail and are set out in the planning consideration section of the report on pages 29 to 32. It's considered that the principle of the development is acceptable and that it would comply with the relevant local development plan policies, and therefore it's recommended that the application be approved subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Any questions, members? No questions? Any comments from members? No comments? If not, you see the recommendation in the report and its outline approval. It's on page 32. Can I ask for a member to move for approval?
Move, Chair.
Councillor Chaplin, I'll take you as seconded. Can you all vote now, please? That was pretty straightforward. Right, we go on to information reports, and they are for information. That's items 5 for an appeal received, item 6, an appeal decision, and number 7 is the delegated decision report for the 1st to the 30th of November, and item 8 is any other business deemed urgent by the chair. I have none, and thank you all for your attendance. I declare the meeting closed.